Hey friends, welcome back. If you've ever stayed at Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans, you probably felt it too. The air never really sleeps there, but for those of us who work behind the scenes, especially housekeeping, there are things we're told our first day, things that don't show up in the employee handbook. 7 rules, and I wish I'd listened from the start. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories from the shadows. My first morning in New Orleans started the way I always imagined it might, with the low, lazy hum of jazz winding through the quarter and the air thick with the smell of rain and powdered sugar. The streets still shimmered from an early downpour, the kind that turns every puddle into a mirror. Hotel Monteleone stood on Royal Street like it had been waiting for me. White stone facade, gold accents that caught the sunlight, a rotating door that breathed in tourists and exhaled ghosts of old ones. I'd seen the pictures online before applying, but standing there in person, it felt different, bigger, older, like the walls had seen more than they should have. Inside, the lobby gleamed under crystal chandeliers, bellboys in pressed uniforms, guests dragging silver suitcases. The kind of place that smells faintly of lemon polish and old perfume. But beneath all that shine, there was something else in the air. Something stale, like the scent that lingers in a room where someone used to smoke, long after they're gone. Miss Lorraine was waiting behind the housekeeping counter. She was small, stern, mid-50s maybe, with a pin always holding back the same strand of hair that insisted on escaping. Her name tag said, Head of Housekeeping, but she didn't need it. You could tell by the way everyone avoided her eyes. You must be the new girl, she said, handing me a neatly folded uniform, crisp white shirt, navy apron, and a name tag that already had my name on it. You'll be working floors 8 through 12. I tried to sound cheerful. That sounds great. I like keeping busy. She looked up then, really looked, and smiled. Only, the smile didn't make it to her eyes. Don't worry, she said. They'll get used to you. They, I laughed. You mean the guests? But she didn't laugh back. She just adjusted her glasses and turned toward the service elevator. You'll see, breakfast ends at 9, and if anyone calls from room 932, don't go. I thought I misheard her. Sorry, don't go where? She hit the elevator button. It groaned before opening. Just remember what I said. You'll be fine if you follow the rules. The elevator doors slid shut between us before I could ask what rules she meant. The ride up was long, too long for 12 floors. The old service lift creaked and moaned, the kind of sound that makes you hold your breath without meaning to. Each floor ticked by with a flickering light above the door, and I swear the air grew colder around the 10th. When I stepped out, the hallway was silent. No music, no footsteps. Just the distant hum of an air vent somewhere down the hall. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew. The wallpaper yellowed at the edges. It didn't match the pristine lobby downstairs. This was the hotel's forgotten skin. I found my cart already parked against the wall, stocked with towels, soap, and a little brass keychain with room numbers etched into tiny metal tags. Someone had already written "Welcome Marie" on the clipboard in looping handwriting. The ink was fresh, still smudged, but I hadn't told anyone my name yet. I swallowed and looked around. The hallway stretched forever, the kind of distance that feels wrong, like it's folding in on itself. I could hear faint jazz music again, but this time it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from behind one of the doors. Room 908, maybe. Slow and muffled, like an old record playing underwater. I started my rounds anyway. Towels replaced, trash emptied, sheets smoothed. Nothing strange, nothing out of place. Until I reached room 912. The door was already open, just a crack. I knocked. Housekeeping. No answer. I pushed gently, the hinges whispering as it swung wider. The room looked normal. Bed made, curtains drawn. Except, on the nightstand sat a silver tray with a half-finished drink, beads of condensation still sliding down the glass. Someone had just been here. Then faintly, I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway behind me. Slow, measured, stopping right outside the door. I turned fast. No one. The hallway was empty. My cart hadn't moved. The air was still. That's when I noticed the room key resting on the table beside the drink. Brass, heavy, with the number 932 etched on it. The same room Miss Lorraine told me never to go near. I froze. My reflection in the window glass looked pale under the dull yellow light. I reached for the key without thinking, just curiosity, that stupid instinct. And when my fingers brushed it, the jazz music outside stopped mid-note. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. That was the moment I realized. Miss Lorraine wasn't warning me as a supervisor. She was warning me as a survivor. And whatever stories the other housekeepers whispered about the 12th floor, they weren't stories at all. That was my first day on Royal Street. The day the hotel smiled back. When I clocked in for my second shift, Miss Lorraine was already waiting at the housekeeping station. Same stiff smile, same tired eyes that looked like they hadn't slept properly in years. She didn't say good morning, just held out a folded piece of paper between two fingers like it was something she didn't want to touch. "Read this when you get to your cart," she said, her voice low. "And don't lose it." Her tone stopped me from asking questions. The other housekeepers avoided looking at us. One of them, a woman named Evelyn, even made the sign of the cross when she saw the paper. I slipped it into my apron pocket, trying to play it cool, but my hands were sweating. When I finally reached my cart on the 10th floor, I unfolded the paper. It wasn't typed or printed. It was handwritten, in neat cursive that looked decades old. The ink had bled in places, like it had been copied over and over again. At the top, it read, "Housekeeping Rules, Hotel Monteleone, Royal Street Division." Below that, 7 lines, uneven, like they'd been written in a hurry. Rule 1. Never take the service elevator alone after midnight. I smiled when I read it. A safety thing, maybe. Those old elevators were notorious for trapping people between floors. But then I remembered the elevator had already creaked when I wrote it earlier. And hadn't it stopped a few seconds too long between the 10th and 11th floors? Rule 2. If you hear a child laughing on the 9th floor, don't answer back. That one made me pause. I'd read online that the hotel was famous for its ghosts, especially a little boy named Maurice, who disappeared back in the 1890s. Guests claimed they heard him running down the hall, laughing, calling for his mother. I thought it was just a tourist thing. But the handwriting, that delicate cursive, made it feel more like a warning than a story. Rule 3. Always knock 3 times before entering room 932, even if it's vacant. The number made my stomach twist. 932. The same room key I found sitting on the nightstand yesterday. The same number Miss Lorraine said not to go near. Vacant or not? Why would anyone knock on a room that's empty? Rule 4. Don't clean mirrors after dusk. That one didn't even pretend to make sense. I looked up from the list, my reflection stretching across the dark glass of the hallway's mirror. The lights above flickered for half a second, and I swore my reflection moved just a beat slower than me. I looked away fast. Rule 5. Leave the towel cart facing the hallway, never toward the room. That made me laugh nervously. Why? I whispered to no one, but the air in the hall seemed to shift, heavier somehow, pressing against my skin. It felt like someone was standing just behind me, breathing quiet and steady. Rule 6. If the phone rings while you're cleaning, don't pick up. Now that one hit me wrong. I remembered hearing about the old phones in these rooms, rotary, antique. But some weren't even connected to the front desk anymore. So who exactly would be calling? Rule 7. And if the carousel bar lights flicker, go home. Right then. I knew the carousel bar. It was famous. It rotated slowly, lit with warm bulbs that never seemed to burn out. It was one of the hotel's prides. But the idea that a housekeeper's emergency signal would involve that bar made no sense, unless something always happened when it did. I folded the paper again, slower this time, and tucked it back into my pocket. But I couldn't stop glancing at the words as I cleaned each room. They stuck to the back of my mind like static. By the time I reached room 909, the air smelled faintly of lilies. Not perfume, not cleaning fluid. The kind of smell you get in funeral homes. Sweet, but cold. I tried to shake it off. Told myself every old building has its creaks, its quirks, its legends. The Monteleone was practically built on them. Still, as I pushed my cart down the corridor, I realized the hall was too quiet. No footsteps from guests, no murmuring TVs, no distant ice machine hum. Just the wheels of my cart and that soft, rhythmic squeak that started to echo, perfectly in time with my heartbeat. At the end of the hall, the service elevator stood open, empty, waiting. The light above it blinked 12, then 11, then 10, over and over, like it couldn't decide where it wanted to stop. That's when I remembered Rule 1. I took a step back, whispering to myself, not after midnight. Then I checked my watch. 2:13 a.m. I hadn't even realized how late it was. The elevator bell dinged once, sharp, and the doors began to close on their own. Just before they did, I caught a glimpse of something inside, a white reflection, faint, like someone standing in the back corner. I shut my eyes, pressed my hand over my apron, and whispered, "Just folklore." But deep down, I knew better. Those weren't just rules. They were a survival guide. And the way the hotel seemed to hum around me, like it was listening, told me I wasn't the first to learn that lesson the hard way. By my second week at the Monteleone, I'd started to feel like I knew the rhythm of the place. Which hallways creaked, which doors stuck, which rooms left the air heavy even after you opened the windows. I'd gotten used to the strange looks from guests and even the unspoken rules the staff seemed to live by. But then came room 932. That morning it was listed as unoccupied on the assignment sheet, just like it had been every day since I started. But Lorraine had never taken it off the roster, like she wanted it to be checked even if no one went inside. The hallway leading there was quiet, too quiet. The patterned carpet muffled every sound, and the lights hummed in that faint, flickering way that made the shadows look like they were breathing. The brass numbers on the door had darkened with age. 932. I stood there with my clipboard, heart tapping faster than I wanted to admit. The rules came back to me, one by one, like they'd been waiting for this moment. Always knock 3 times before entering room 932, even if it's vacant. I laughed under my breath, trying to shake it off. "All right, Marie," I muttered. "Just humor the paper." I raised my knuckles and knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. No response. But as I reached for the handle, I caught the faintest smell. Not cleaning solution, not dust, but perfume. Old perfume. Powdery, floral, the kind your grandmother might have worn. It hung in the air just enough to feel personal, like someone had just walked through the door minutes before I arrived. I pushed it open. Housekeeping. The lights were off, but a gray wash of daylight spilled through the heavy curtains. The room looked untouched, the bed perfectly made, the nightstand bare, but the temperature felt wrong. It was cold near the door, then warmer by the window, like the air itself was unsettled. I moved toward the TV stand to check the dusting, and that's when the television snapped on by itself. A burst of static filled the room, loud, violent, like white noise screaming. I jumped back, nearly knocking over my cart. The screen glowed with nothing but gray and black snow. I reached for the remote on the nightstand, but there wasn't one. The buttons on the TV didn't respond either. Then, just as suddenly, the volume dropped to a whisper. The static flattened out into silence, and in that silence, I heard it. A small voice. A child's voice, right behind me. "Don't let him in." The words were soft, almost polite. But they froze me where I stood. I turned so fast I dropped my duster. It clattered to the floor. No one was there. The bathroom door stood half open, the mirror catching a sliver of my reflection, pale, trembling, and wide-eyed. I tried to steady my breath. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, it's just maybe a guest next door. Walls are thin, that's all." Then the door behind me, the main door, clicked. Slowly, deliberately, like someone had turned the handle from the outside and let it fall shut. I spun back toward it. The handle rested still, locked. That perfume smell grew stronger. I stepped back, bumping into the bedpost, and that's when I saw them, faint, glistening on the carpet near the bathroom. Footprints, wet ones, small, child-sized. They led from the tiled bathroom floor straight toward the bed. I followed them with my eyes, afraid to move, until they stopped right at the foot of the mattress. Two perfect prints side by side, as if whoever made them had been standing there, watching. The TV crackled again. The static flared bright, casting the room in a harsh silver light. And for a split second, just one, I thought I saw a figure reflected in the screen, a small silhouette. Then the light flickered out. The TV went black. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to run. I should have run. But something made me stay. Maybe duty, maybe denial. I forced myself toward the bathroom, every step slow, my heart pounding loud enough to drown out thought. The air inside was damp, heavy with steam, even though nothing had been running. The sink was dry, the tub was empty, but there was a single bar of soap on the edge, used, half melted, and still wet. Someone had been there. Then, tap. A single drop fell into the tub. I looked up. The faucet wasn't dripping. The water was coming from higher up, from the shower head, but the handle was turned off, and above it, on the fogged glass of the shower door, a phrase had been traced out with a fingertip. "He watches." That's when I bolted. I yanked open the main door, nearly toppling my cart as I stumbled into the hallway. The air out there felt alive, charged, like walking into an electric storm. Miss Lorraine was waiting at the far end, arms folded. Her expression didn't change when she saw me. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't have to. "You opened it, didn't you?" she said quietly. I nodded, shaking. "Then listen close," she said, walking toward me. "If you ever hear that child again, don't look for him. And for God's sake, never stay past sunset." She handed me a fresh key card for another floor and took the old one from my trembling hand. That night, I couldn't sleep, because every time I closed my eyes, I could still smell the perfume. And somewhere, in the dark corners of my memory, a voice kept whispering, "Don't let him in." I still don't know who he was, but I know that room 932 doesn't stay empty for long. 2 nights later, I made the mistake every Monteleone housekeeper learns not to make. My shift ran late. We were slammed that night. Wedding parties, spill cleanups, room changes, VIP requests. The kind of chaos that keeps you running until your legs feel like wet sand. By the time I finished restocking the carts on the 10th floor, every guest room was quiet, every hallway dimmed, and the only sound was the low hum of old AC vents rattling like an exhale. I checked the clock mounted above the supply closet. 12:18 a.m. My stomach dropped. Rule 1 echoed in my head like a warning siren. Never take the service elevator alone after midnight. I told myself it didn't matter. Rules were just rules. Old superstitions. Stories passed around to scare new hires. I wasn't going to take the stairs down 11 floors with an aching back and a 50-pound laundry bag. So I pushed the cart into the service lift, dragged the bag behind me, and hit the button for the basement. The doors clanged shut, louder than usual. and the elevator started its slow, groaning descent. The kind where you feel every gear strain like it's trying to remember how to work. The faint scent of metal and oil filled the air, and for the first time since working there, I noticed how small that elevator really was. Then, halfway between the 9th and 8th floors, it stopped. No warning, no gentle shake, just a violent jerk that snapped the strap of the laundry bag and nearly knocked me into the wall. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then went blood red. Not emergency yellow, not soft orange, red. The kind of color that makes your instincts stand straight up like a cold hand pressed between your shoulder blades. I pressed the door open button. Nothing. Pressed the alarm. It gave a sad little click, like it wasn't connected to anything at all. That's when the quiet shifted. Not louder, just different. Like the air in the elevator suddenly had weight. Like something else had stepped inside with me, changing the temperature by a few degrees. I swallowed and forced myself to look forward at the metal grate mounted on the door. The same grate that always showed your reflection faintly, stretched by the steel pattern. My reflection looked back at me, anxious, pale, lip trembling. But then, as my breath hitched, my reflection moved before I did. Its head tilted first, just a few degrees. Then its shoulders shifted. Then the mouth, my mouth, curled into a slow, creeping smile. I didn't smile. I didn't even blink. But I did. Slowly, deliberately. Like whoever was in that metal grate wanted me to watch every muscle move. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the railing. The metal felt icy, like it had been pulled out of a freezer, and then my reflection leaned closer toward the grate. I stood frozen. Its lips parted, and in a soft, breathy whisper that came from the grate itself, not the air around me, it said, "Going down." The sound curled through the elevator like smoke in a dead room. I slammed my palm against the buttons. Basement, lobby, any floor that might feel sane, as panic clawed up my throat. The elevator lurched again. Then the light snapped back to white. The cart rattled. My ears popped. And the doors slowly peeled open with a groan so long and heavy it felt like something was pulling them apart from the wrong side. But this wasn't the basement, or the lobby, or anything I recognized. The sign across from me, rusted metal, barely hanging on, read, 13th floor, only. The Monteleone doesn't have a 13th floor. It never did. Even the guest elevators skip from 12 to 14. This shouldn't have existed. The hallway stretched out like a spine. Long, dark, no lights, no carpet. Just bare concrete and old wallpaper peeling like dead skin. The air smelled of mold, cigarettes, and something sweet and rotten underneath. Something wrong. My cart rolled forward on its own, just a few inches, like something had nudged it. I grabbed the rails and pulled it back, hard. My reflection in the metal grate had vanished completely. But in the darkness ahead, I swear something else moved. A shape, small, quick, child-sized. I staggered backward, slammed my hand against the door close button, praying the elevator still worked. The doors shut halfway, stopped, then shuddered. For one long, sickening second, I thought they'd reopen. Thought something on that floor was holding them, watching me. Then, mercifully, they clattered shut. The elevator dropped 3 floors so fast my vision blurred. When the doors finally opened again, I was in the lobby. Music playing, lights warm, people laughing, like nothing happened. Except, Miss Lorraine was standing by the desk, staring directly at me. Not with surprise, with disappointment. "You took the elevator after midnight," she said quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Next time you won't come back down on the right floor." I wanted to ask her what was on the 13th floor, why the reflection smiled, why it knew my voice, but she turned away before I could speak. And as I pushed my cart onto the marble floor, I realized the elevator behind me was still lit red. Just for a moment. Just long enough for me to see a faint outline in the metal grate. Something small, child-shaped, smiling, waiting. When those elevator doors opened onto the so-called 13th floor, it didn't just look abandoned, it looked erased. The corridor was impossibly long, stretching into a dim haze like two hallways stacked on top of each other. The carpet, what was left of it, was sun-bleached and torn, seams curling like old skin, wallpaper hung in strips, water-warped and brown. The place didn't smell like a working hotel. It smelled like mildew, basement air, and something metallic underneath, almost like old blood on iron. But what unnerved me most wasn't the decay. It was the silence. The kind of silence that feels pressurized, like sound itself was afraid to exist there. Every door along the hall was shut tight, except one. Room 1309. The door wasn't just open. It was cracked, barely an inch, and gently breathing inward with each draft like someone was standing on the other side waiting for me to approach. I swallowed the lump in my throat and took a step toward it, pushing my cleaning cart only because it gave the illusion of something between me and the dark. My shoes sank slightly into the damp carpet. Damp. The same way rooms feel right after a pipe bursts, or when something has been sitting too long without sunlight. When I reached the doorway, the smell changed, sharper, colder, like the air had been sitting still for decades. I knocked, whispering out of habit, "Housekeeping." My voice felt small, wrong, like it shouldn't have been spoken there. No reply, so I nudged the door open, and instantly regretted it. The bed sheets were crisp and white, tucked tight and immaculate. Hotel perfect. But when I touched them with the back of my hand, they were wet, not damp from laundry, not warm like they'd just been changed, cold, clammy, like a sheet left out in the rain and then frozen. I stepped farther inside, scanning the room with my flashlight. The light bobbed over peeling paint, rusted lamp bases, and carpet stains that looked years old. But then my beam hit something in the far corner, next to the closet. A maid's cart, an old one. Metal wheels, worn canvas pouches, the kind they haven't used since the early 50s. The tag still swinging from its handle read, M. Lemoine, 1953-1953. My heart thudded once, hard. Monsieur Lemoine. That name was on the memorial plaque in the staff hallway. A housekeeper who tragically passed while on shift. No details, no explanations, just her name, her date, 1953. My flashlight flickered, hard, like something had walked right in front of it. I lifted it toward the dresser mirror and saw myself, but not me, an older version of me. Same uniform, same apron, same tired posture, but her hair was streaked gray at the temples, her eyes hollow like she hadn't slept in years. And she was cleaning, mechanically, like a loop she couldn't break out of. She stopped, lifted her head, and looked at me. Her lips moved, slowly. I watched the words form in the fogged glass. "You shouldn't have stayed." My blood ran cold. I stumbled backward so fast my hips slammed into the bed frame. My flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground, its beam spinning wildly across the walls. The lights overhead flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out entirely. Pitch black swallowed the room. Instant, suffocating darkness. I froze, listening, straining, because in a blackout, sound becomes vision. For a few seconds there was nothing. Just the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. Then, faintly, the wet slap, slap, slap of small bare feet moving across the carpet. Not running, not rushing, walking, slow, measured, child-sized steps. They moved from the bathroom, across the room, stopping somewhere between me and the door. I held my breath until my lungs screamed. Then, another sound joined it. Metal wheels, creaking. The old maid's cart in the corner shifting forward an inch, then another. as if someone unseen was pushing it. I squeezed my eyes shut and whispered, "Please, please, no." And then, a whisper close to my ear, soft enough to almost be mistaken for breath. "He's here." My hand shot out blindly, scrambling for the wall. The door, anything solid. My fingers hit the door frame and I barreled out into the hallway, tripping over my own cart. The hallway lights buzzed back on like nothing happened. Bright, loud, too normal. Behind me, room 1309's door swung shut with a soft click, like someone inside had quietly closed it. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe until the elevator arrived. Thank God this time it was the guest elevator, not the service one. And as the doors closed, I heard it again. That same wet, soft slap of small bare feet, just behind the door of room 1309, waiting. When consciousness finally crawled its way back into my body, the first thing I noticed wasn't the cold floor beneath me. It was the hum of the hotel vents. The sound was familiar, ordinary, except it felt wrong, like waking up in a stranger's bed. My eyelids fluttered open, dry and aching. The ceiling above me came into focus in slow pieces. The patterned cream paint, the recessed lights, the faint water stain shaped like a handprint. Then I realized something else. I was lying on my side, near the elevator doors, on the 8th floor. Not the lobby, not the staff area, not the 13th floor I should have never stepped onto. The 8th floor. I must have passed out, lost time. How I got there, God only knows. My cheek stuck slightly to the carpet as I pushed myself up. The hallway looked normal. The framed jazz posters, the warm lights, the faint smell of lemon cleaner. Everything seemed too quiet, but stable. Normal enough that for a moment, I wondered if the whole thing had just been a nightmare stitched together from exhaustion. Then the elevator behind me gave a soft ding. The doors slid open. Empty. Yet a cold gust pushed against my back, strong enough to raise goosebumps along my arms, like something inside the elevator had exhaled. I scrambled to my feet. "Marie?" I turned toward the voice. Miss Lorraine, my supervisor, standing a few feet down the hall. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't rushing toward me. She just stood there with that same heavy expression she carried the first day she handed me my uniform. Except this time, the worry wasn't hidden. It was carved right into her face. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, hurrying toward me. She reached for my wrist, checking my pulse like she'd done this before. Her fingers were cool, steady, practiced. "Pale as a sheet," she muttered. Hands freezing, eyes glazed. She tilted my face upward so she could look me dead in the eyes. "You took the service elevator, didn't you?" I didn't speak. My throat felt stuck, dry, like I'd swallowed dust. I didn't need to answer, but I nodded anyway. Her shoulders slumped in a deep, disappointed exhale. Not angry, just resigned. Like someone watching a person make the same mistake everyone before them had already made. She guided me to sit against the wall. "You've got one free pass," she said softly. "Just one." Her voice wavered, not with fear, but with familiarity, like she'd said those words before, to someone else, maybe to many someones. My breathing felt too loud. Each inhale trembled. Each exhale barely made it out. "What happened? I don't understand. I was on—" "Don't say it," she cut in sharply. "Don't name it." Her eyes flicked toward the service elevator down the hall. Even from this distance, it looked off, the lights above it flickering ever so subtly, the doors slightly misaligned like the whole thing was shifting in place. Miss Lorraine leaned closer, voice dipping low. "You're lucky you woke up on the 8th floor. Not everyone does." I stared at her, heart pounding. "What does that mean?" She swallowed, choosing her words like each one was a live wire. "That old elevator, it follows the hotel's memory, not its floors. Certain times, certain places, certain people." She glanced at me, brows knitting. Some say it shows you what this place has forgotten. Some say it shows you what it wants you to know. I shook my head. What did I see? You're still here, she answered quietly. That's all that matters. But the fear in her eyes said she knew more. Much more. She stood, then helped me onto unsteady feet. My knees nearly buckled, and she tightened her grip on my arm. Listen to me, she said firmly. You must follow the rules, to the letter. Forget folklore, forget jokes. These rules are the only reason the housekeeping staff still exists. I blinked. Has someone broken them before? Her jaw tightened. Everyone breaks one rule, one time. That's how the hotel tests you. She squeezed my arm, voice dropping into a whisper. But don't test it back. Behind us, the guest elevator dinged again. But this time, it didn't open. The lights above it flickered once, twice, then turned red. My stomach clenched. Lorraine didn't even turn her head. Let's go, she said. You're clocking out early tonight. She didn't have to tell me twice. As we walked toward the stairwell, the only way she ever traveled after dark, I couldn't shake the prickling sensation running up my spine, because I swear, from the service elevator at the end of the hall, I heard that same soft, wet sound from the 13th floor, the faint patter of bare feet, following. And somewhere, deep inside the elevator shaft, a child's voice giggled. Not happy, not playful, knowing. The thing about working in the Monteleone is this. Some floors feel alive. Some floors feel empty. But the ninth floor feels aware. It watches you. That next night, I was assigned to vacuum the entire hallway before turn-down service. Simple task, mindless. I'd done 1,000 times in 1,000 hotels, but halfway down the corridor, the air changed. The hallway lights dimmed just slightly, just enough that the shadows stretched a shade too long. The vacuum hummed under my hands, steady and grounding, the only noise breaking the old building's restless quiet. Then I heard it. A soft laugh, a little boy's laugh. It floated from behind me first. Light, breathy, like someone trying not to be caught having fun. I froze, my hands locked on the vacuum handle. Slowly, I turned my head. Nothing. The hallway was empty from end to end. No guests, no carts, no housekeepers, no echo from another floor. Just emptiness. I swallowed and forced myself to keep vacuuming. The machine roared back to life against the carpet fibers, humming like a comfort blanket for grown-ups. Then the laughter came again, this time from in front of me, from farther down the hallway, from room 928. My chest tightened. Room 928 had been sealed for 2 months. Renovation, maintenance issues, nobody inside, nobody should be inside. I took my hand off the vacuum handle, and the machine rattled forward an inch before settling into silence. I stood still, listening hard, holding my breath like sound might shatter something fragile in the air. "Hello?" I called out instinctively. The word left my mouth before my brain caught up, and the moment the O faded off my lips, my stomach dropped. Rule 2. If you hear a child laughing on the 9th floor, don't answer back. My blood went cold, and as if the hotel itself wanted to punish me instantly for forgetting, the laughter stopped, cut off, clean, silent. The vacuum sputtered once beneath my hand, then shut off completely. No power, no hum, just a dead, immovable weight. The hallway felt suddenly too long, too still, like I had stepped into a painting instead of a place. I spun around, scanning the carpet, the walls, the corners. That's when I saw it. Something small sitting a few feet behind me, placed perfectly in the middle of the hallway runner. A toy. A carousel toy. Old, painted wood. Chipped horses with gold poles. Something straight out of the 1950s. Its colors were faded, like it had been kept in an attic for 80 years. I hadn't seen it there moments before. I knew it wasn't there. My breath shook in my chest. Slowly, cautiously, I stepped toward it. The toy carousel didn't move at first. Then, just as my foot reached the carpet beside it, it began to spin. Slow, perfectly centered, as if a small, careful hand had set it in motion. And once it reached a steady rotation, the music began. Not a nursery tune, not the kind of melody old toys usually play, but a warm, brassy version of a New Orleans classic, When the Saints Go Marching In. A song that should have sounded joyful, but here, in that empty hallway, it sounded hollow, slowed down, like it was echoing from underwater. Each note dragged its feet across my spine. I backed away. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but the air felt thick, like moving too fast might draw the wrong kind of attention. The toy spun faster. The song grew louder yet more distorted, like a brass band slowly drowning in static. My eyes watered from fear. I whispered, "Please stop." And just like that, it did. The carousel froze mid-spin. Music cut off mid-note. Silence swallowed the floor. Then, a soft creak slid down the hallway. Not from a door, not from the ceiling, from the AIR vent above room 928. A high, faint whistle, like someone breathing through metal slats. I stared, frozen. Something on the other side of that vent seemed to shift. A shadow, small, barely perceptible. Then a whisper. Not a child's voice this time. Softer, older, like someone who had been here far longer than I had. "Don't answer him again!" My entire body went cold. I grabbed the vacuum cord, yanked it free from the wall outlet, and backed away slowly until I reached the stairwell door. I didn't look back at room 928. I didn't look at the toy, but I could feel it watching me. The weight of something unseen pressing against my back as I pushed into the stairwell and let the heavy door slam shut behind me. And even on the stairs, surrounded by concrete and fluorescent lights, I could still hear the toy's last broken note echoing inside my head. Oh, when the saints. Oh, when the saints. There are rooms that look normal in the Monteleone, and then there are rooms that feel like they're waiting for you. Room 1012 was one of the waiting ones. It started as a routine request. A handwritten note slipped under the housekeeping office door. "Extra towels for 1012, please leave them inside, thank you." The handwriting was neat, elegant, the kind of cursive you don't see much anymore. I didn't think anything of it. Guests leave notes all the time. Some shy, some private. Some just don't want to call the front desk. I loaded the towels onto my cart and took the guest elevator to the 10th floor. The moment the doors opened, I felt that familiar pressure, like stepping into air that wasn't meant to be inhaled. But tonight it felt heavier, warmer, almost expectant. Still, I pushed my cart down the hallway, reminding myself to breathe normally and not look at any reflective surfaces. Rule 4. Don't clean mirrors after dusk. But I wasn't cleaning. I was delivering towels. Totally different, or so I thought. Room 1012's door was slightly cracked, just enough to show that the latch didn't catch. I knocked twice on the wood. "Housekeeping, towels." No response. I nudged the door open with my foot. The room was dark except for one lamp near the bed, casting a warm pool of light across the floor. The curtains were drawn, and the AC rattled softly, the type of noise that normally calms people in hotel rooms. And then, I saw her. A woman sitting perfectly still on the edge of the bed. Long black hair, ivory nightgown. Her back to me, her shoulders rising and falling in an easy rhythm. She was brushing her hair. Slow, slow strokes. The sound of the brush against her hair was so soft, it was almost hypnotic. I cleared my throat. "Ma'am, you requested extra towels?" She didn't move. Not a flinch, not a pause in her brush strokes. I stepped closer, thinking maybe she was wearing earbuds or was hard of hearing. The towels felt heavier in my arms the closer I got to her. "Ma'am," I repeated louder, "your towels are here." Finally, she stopped brushing. Her hand froze midair. But her shoulders didn't tense. No startle, no surprise. Just stillness. like she'd been waiting for me to speak. She turned slowly, so slowly it made every hair on my arms rise. Her face came into view in fragments. The jawline first, then her cheek, then her eyes. Her expression was blank, not unfriendly, just empty, as if she were listening for something behind me rather than looking at me. But it wasn't her turning that froze me in place. It was the mirror. A large dresser mirror sat across from her bed, reflecting the entire room, the lamp, the curtains, the carpet, and her. Only, her reflection wasn't moving. It was still brushing its hair. Long, slow strokes, even as the real woman faced me. The brush passed through the reflected hair with perfect rhythm, while the real woman's hand hovered frozen in mid-air. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment I couldn't move. My body locked itself into place like the air had turned to cement. The real woman tilted her head at me, confused, or curious, or maybe just pretending. Her eyes glistened under the lamp's glow, but in the mirror, her reflection began to smile. Wide, too wide. My legs gave out. I stumbled backward, dropping the towels. They scattered across the carpet like discarded bones. The reflection's smile grew wider, stretching in a way no face should stretch, while the real woman's lips never moved. That broke me. I bolted. I sprinted out of that room so fast I hit the hallway wall with my shoulder. Pain radiated down my arm, but I kept running. Down the hall, past the elevators, into the stairwell. I didn't stop until I reached the service level, breathless, shaking. One hand pressed against my chest like it could keep my heart from escaping. When I finally reached the housekeeping office, I slammed the door behind me and dug into my apron pocket for the rules list. That old, worn sheet Miss Lorraine had given me on day one. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly ripped it. I grabbed a pen off the desk and, with my heart still pounding too loud to think straight, I wrote on the back, Rule 8. Don't look into any mirrors after sunset, even by accident. Then, underlining the words with a shaky hand, I added, they can see you even when the person cannot. I set the paper down, stared at the ink sinking into the page, and realized something terrifying. This hotel wasn't dangerous because it was haunted. It was dangerous because it was aware. And the mirrors? The mirrors were its eyes. Room 1104 was supposed to be an easy clean. Quick wipe down, fresh towels, new toiletries, vacuum, done. A breather compared to the nightmare floors I'd been dealing with all week. But the second I walked in, I felt it. That thick hush that settles in a room where something unseen has already made itself comfortable. The curtains were drawn. The lamp near the bed flickered once, then steadied. And the air had that faint coldness to it. Not winter cold, but hospital cold. A chill with memory. I pushed my cart inside, humming softly to keep my nerves steady. Just sinks and mirrors today, I told myself. Nothing weird. I regret thinking that. I really do. I headed into the bathroom, rubber gloves snapping into place. The sink had toothpaste flecks and a faint lipstick smear on the porcelain. Routine mess. Human mess. The kind I liked because it reminded me the living still used these rooms. I scrubbed in slow circles, letting the warm water run. And then, the phone rang. A razor-sharp, shrill ring that sliced through the quiet. I froze. Not because a phone ringing is strange, but because the phone in 1104 was an old rotary phone, the decorative kind hotels keep for nostalgia, the kind they tell us during orientation. These don't connect to anything, they're for show. The ringing echoed again. Longer, louder, like it wanted me specifically. My heart thumped against my ribs. Don't pick up, I whispered. Rule 6 flashing in my mind. If the phone rings while you're cleaning, don't pick up. I should have listened. But fear and curiosity mix into something dangerous. Something that blurs judgment. The phone rang a third time. And my hand, well, it reached for the receiver before I even realized what I was doing. I lifted it to my ear. Hello? For a moment, there was nothing. Just a soft, muted static, like ocean waves in a seashell. Then, a ragged whisper crawled through the line. "They remember you." My stomach dropped to my knees. The voice was rough, old, broken at the edges like whoever owned it hadn't spoken in decades. It forced each syllable out as if they were being dragged over gravel. I almost dropped the phone, but before I could say anything, before I could breathe, the line went dead. Not clicked, not disconnected, just dead. The silence that followed felt thick enough to touch. I slowly lowered the receiver back onto the cradle, and that's when I noticed the air shifting. The bathroom door behind me creaked, soft at first, then harder. A slow, long groan like someone leaning their whole weight against it. The mirror above the sink fogged over in seconds, not from steam. The water wasn't hot. The room wasn't warm. This fog came from nowhere. I stepped back, staring as the condensation spread across the glass like invisible breath painting it stroke by stroke. Then lines formed in the fog. At first, random smears. Then deliberate. Letters, words, backwards. Written from inside the mirror. I leaned in, heartbeat hammering my ribs, trying to make out the shapes. And then it became clear. "Welcome back, Marie." My name, spelled perfectly. Written across the glass like a greeting from someone who'd waited a long, long time. A coldness bloomed in my chest. The kind of cold that doesn't fade with breath or blinking or logic. Someone in that hotel knew me. Not from paperwork. Not from seeing my name tag. Not from hearing me introduce myself. Someone, or something, knew me from somewhere else, or from sometime else. I stumbled backwards into the hall, nearly tripping over my own cart. My legs felt numb, as if they were moving without permission. Before I shut the door, I forced myself to look one last time. The writing hadn't faded. In fact, it looked wetter, fresher, like whoever wrote it was still standing inside the glass. Watching, waiting. The elevator doors down the hall opened with a soft ding. Empty, but the lights inside flickered, once, twice, in the exact same rhythm as a heartbeat. My heartbeat. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs. All 11 flights, my breath shaking the whole way. That night, I added a new line to my list of rules, squeezed between Rule 6 and Rule 7 in cramped handwriting. Rule 8. If the phone rings, it's never for housekeeping. And if it knows your name, leave the room immediately. Because whatever remembered me wanted me to remember it back, and I wasn't ready to know what that meant. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fogged mirror in 1104. My name drawn backward by a hand I could not see. I heard that rasped whisper through the rotary line. "They remember you." And I couldn't shake the feeling that every hallway, every elevator, every mirror in the Monteleone was turning to look at me. So the next morning I didn't clock in. I didn't grab my cart. I didn't even tie my apron. Instead, I went straight to the housekeeping office, where Lorraine always sat with her coffee and clipboard, pretending she didn't know more than she let on. Except today, she wasn't pretending. She was sitting in her chair with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the wall like she'd been awake all night too. When she saw me in the doorway, she didn't smile. She didn't scold me for being late. She didn't say a word. I shut the door behind me. "Lorraine," I said softly, "tell me what's going on in this hotel." She flinched, a small brittle movement, before returning her gaze to the wall. "Not now, Marie. You're too tired to—" "No." My voice cracked. "This isn't just a haunting. Whatever's happening here, it's personal. Someone wrote my name on a fogged mirror when no one else was in the room. Someone whispered to me on a phone that isn't even connected. Someone on that 13th floor." "Stop." Her voice cut sharp. And for the first time since I'd met Miss Lorraine, I heard fear. Real fear. The kind you learn to recognize in places where people disappear. She stood slowly, closing the blinds even though they were already half shut. Then she locked the office door. Only then did she speak, her voice low, trembling and fragile. "You weren't supposed to see that floor." "I didn't mean to." "No one ever means to," she whispered. She sank into her chair like the weight of the hotel was dragging her downward. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, "This hotel doesn't just haunt people, Marie." Her eyes met mine, tired, glassy. "It keeps them." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Keeps them?" I asked. "What does that mean?" She wiped at the corner of her eye, and that's when I saw it. The strain in her face, the grief carved into the lines around her mouth. "There are housekeepers," she whispered, "maids, cleaners, who never left." "Not really. They never checked out. They're part of this place now." A cold pressure tightened around my ribs. "You mean ghosts?" Her head moved side to side. "Not quite a no. Not quite a yes. Not ghosts," she murmured. "More like echoes. Servants the hotel holds on to, loyal to it, bound to it. Some of them don't even know they're gone." My knees nearly buckled. "Is that what I saw?" I whispered. "That woman in the mirror? The older version of me?" Lorraine's eyes fell closed. She inhaled deeply, like she'd been holding the truth inside her for decades. "This place chooses who stays. Sometimes it shows them their future. Sometimes it shows them their past. Sometimes it shows them someone else entirely." She wiped her palms on her slacks, like they were sweating. I stepped closer. "Lorraine, I found a housekeeping card on that floor, a rusted one, old. The name tag said M. Lemoyne. Who was that?" Her breath hitched, her face twisted, not in anger, not in confusion, but in heartbreak. "That was my sister." The room felt smaller, darker, like the hotel itself was listening to our conversation through the walls. "She worked here?" I whispered. She nodded. 1953. She was 19, young, sharp. Everybody loved her. She knew every room by heart, every guest by name. The hotel liked her. The way she said liked made my stomach drop. "What happened to her?" Lorraine didn't answer at first. Her jaw trembled. Her eyes drifted to the closed office door. Then, barely audible, she disappeared. "How?" "She took the service elevator after midnight," she whispered. "Back when no one understood the rules. She went up, but she never came down." A cold thrill climbed my spine. "She's still there," Lorraine said, voice cracking. "On that floor you went to, pushing that same cart, doing her rounds. The hotel kept her because she didn't break the right rule in time." I felt sick. My skin prickled. "But why didn't anyone stop her?" "We didn't know back then," Lorraine said. "Not until we learned to write the rules. Not until we realized the hotel gives you one warning, one chance." Her hand closed around mine, tight, urgent. "Marie, you've already used yours." The floor seemed to tilt under me. "You can't make another mistake," she whispered. "You can't break another rule, because the Monteleone watches its own. And once it decides you belong..." She swallowed, tears finally slipping free. "It never lets go." By the time my shift ended that night, my nerves were shot. Lorraine's confession replayed in my mind like a broken reel. The hotel keeps people. My sister never left. You've already used your warning. I went downstairs telling myself to clock out, go home, breathe, pretend life was normal for a few hours. But as I stepped into the lobby, something tugged at me. A subtle shift in the air. A warning. A chill. A hum under my skin. The carousel bar was glowing in the center of the hotel like a jewel. Gold lights, polished wood, slow rotation, hypnotizing anyone who looked too long. It was full that night. Laughter, jazz, glasses clinking. People living their lives without a clue that the walls around them were listening, remembering, choosing. I tried to walk past it, but then, the first flicker. It was tiny, barely a blink. The lights overhead dimmed, then brightened. No one else reacted. Not the bartenders, not the guests, not the tourists taking pictures of their cocktails spinning in circles. But my stomach dropped straight to the floor. Because Rule 7 wasn't poetic. It wasn't symbolic. It was simple. If the carousel bar lights flicker, go home, right then. I froze in place, heart pounding in my throat. And that's when I saw her. Lorraine, standing at the far end of the bar. Not working, not holding a clipboard, not blending into the fabric of hotel routines like she always did. She was just standing there, still, pale, staring directly at me. Her face looked wrong. Not scared, not angry, resigned, like she already knew something I hadn't caught up to yet. Our eyes locked. And she mouthed one word across the spinning bar, "Go." I took a step toward her. She shook her head. "Lorraine!" I called over the music. She didn't raise her hand, didn't wave me over. Instead, she leaned in closer to the bar counter, gripping its edge with trembling fingers. I pushed through the crowd, weaving between guests and stools, stumbling as the carousel rotated slowly beneath them. Every time I lost sight of her between people, my heart seized. I needed to reach her, to tell her we needed to leave together, to ask what she meant, to understand what she knew. Then, the second flicker. This one wasn't small. The lights dimmed harshly, then surged back with a sputtering buzz. Gasps erupted from a few tables. People laughed nervously, chalking it up to old wiring. But the musicians paused. Just half a second, looking around like they felt something slip in the air. Lorraine's face drained of color. She mouthed it again. "Go home." I rounded the bar corner, 3 feet away from her now, when the entire hotel seemed to inhale. Every bulb above the carousel flared. Then, darkness, complete, total, suffocating. Guests screamed, glass shattered, chairs scraped. Someone knocked over a drink tray. The band's trumpet let out one lonely, terrified squeal before cutting off. I held my breath, listening. The darkness felt alive, pressing against my skin, crawling across my neck like fingertips. Then, quietly, something creaked. A wooden groaning sound. Long, slow, like the carousel turning without power. But it wasn't turning. Not anymore. When the lights snapped back on, bright, blinding, buzzing, everything looked frozen. Guests clutched their seats. Bartenders stood mid-motion. The musicians stared at their instruments. And the carousel bar, the pride of the hotel, the one thing that never stopped spinning, was completely still. Mid-turn. Seats half-rotated, glassware suspended on unsteady tabletops. Frozen, like time had held its breath. I spun toward the place where Lorraine had been standing. She was gone, not walking away, not slipping into the crowd, not heading toward the back hallway. Just gone. "Lorraine!" I called, stepping around the corner of the bar. Nothing. No sign of her. No sign she'd ever been there. On the counter, untouched, sat her key ring, the one she wore clipped to her belt every hour of every day. And beside it, a tag. Old. Rusting around the edges. M. Sur le Moine, 1953. My breath caught in my throat. The carousel lights flickered once more, softly, like a final warning, or a final goodbye. My knees went weak. The room tilted. Something deep in the hotel groaned, a low, ancient sound that vibrated through the marble under my feet. And all I could think was, the Monteleone had made its choice. Not mine, not Lorraine's, its own. I don't work at Hotel Monteleone anymore. At least, not officially. I turned in my apron the morning after Lorraine vanished. The hotel manager barely asked a question, just stared at me with this polite, empty smile, like the kind you give a guest, not an employee. Like he already knew why I was leaving. Like dozens had done the same before me. I walked out the front doors shaking, my chest tight, my heart bruised from everything I'd seen. But what they don't tell you is, you don't leave the Monteleone in one day, not in 1 week, not in one lifetime. That place follows you like a shadow that remembers your footsteps. Now, when I walk down Royal Street, day or night, I try not to look at the hotel, but I always do. Like something tugs my chin toward it, reminding me I didn't leave on my own terms. The Monteleone stands there white and proud, all glittering chandeliers and gold accents. Tourists pose for pictures outside. Bellboys chatter while pulling luggage that's probably heavier than their paychecks. The doorman greets strangers with the same warm welcome I used to hear every morning. But underneath all of that, beneath that shine, there's a hum, low, steady, a lullaby woven into the walls like a pulse. And at around 3 a.m., if you're close enough, you'll hear it. A soft melody drifting from the upper floors. Not music, not wind, but something between. A song the hotel has been singing long before I ever set foot inside. Sometimes I walk past the lobby windows. Sometimes I make the mistake of glancing inside. And I swear, every time, I see her, Lorraine, not standing, not walking, but polishing the brass railing along the lobby staircase. A piece of railing that doesn't even exist anymore. Her reflection moves slowly, tiredly, like she's worked an entire shift, or like she's been working the same shift for 70 years. She doesn't look older, she doesn't look younger. She looks stuck, suspended, held in place by something that won't let her rest. The first time I saw her, I told myself it was grief. The second time, I told myself it was a trick of the glass. The fifth time, I didn't tell myself anything. I just kept walking, but I learned something after she disappeared. The hotel still hires. New faces show up all the time, hopeful, excited, desperate, exhausted, fresh out of school or running from something. Most don't last more than a week. A few last a month, and then the brave ones leave. The unlucky ones stay, and the ones the hotel likes never leave at all. If you ever stay there, as a guest, not as one of us, you might notice odd things. A chill on the elevator, a child giggling on the 9th floor, a maid's cart left in the hallway with no housekeeper in sight, a mirror that doesn't quite reflect you the way it should. You might shrug it off, tell yourself old buildings creak, tell yourself ghosts aren't real, tell yourself it's your imagination, but listen to me carefully. Because this is the last thing I'll ever say about that place. The rules weren't superstitions. They weren't jokes. They weren't old wives' tales or training pranks or warnings meant to spook new hires. They were survival. Real, necessary, bone-deep survival. So if you ever stay at the Hotel Monteleone, if you ever find yourself walking down Royal Street with a reservation in your hand and curiosity in your chest, remember these last rules. Don't laugh back at the child on the 9th floor. He's not playing. He's remembering. Don't clean the mirrors after sunset. You don't want to see who's behind you, or worse, who you'll become. And if the carousel bar lights so much as flicker, not once, not twice, but even for half a second, run. Don't grab your luggage. Don't cash out your tab. Don't wait for your friends. Don't turn around to see what stopped the carousel mid-turn. Because trust me, that's not a power surge. That's not a loose bulb. That's not faulty wiring. That's your welcome. And once the Monteleone welcomes you, it never plans to let you leave.